Welcome to Report Channel. Since the declaration of the establishment of the Islamic Republic of Iran in 1979, the Iranian government is accused by the United States of America of financing, providing equipment, weapons, training and providing sanctuary to terrorists. The U.S. State Department describes Iran as a state active in sponsoring terrorism. U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said, "Iran is the country that, in many ways, is the central bank for terrorism in important areas in the Middle East region, such as Lebanon, through Hezbollah, and we have deep concerns about what Iran is doing in southern Iraq." After the fall of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran established the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. This is to enhance the local social policies of the government. The organization is accused of spreading its ideology in the neighboring regions by training and financing terrorist organizations. By 1986, it had a total membership of 350,000, and it had a small naval and air force. By 1996, the number of the ground forces had reached 100,000 and the number of the navy had reached 20,000. His arm is believed to be using the Quds force to train hardline Islamists. Currently, the Quds force units are being trained in both Iran and Sudan. In 1995, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard held a conference with organizations from all over the world accused of involvement in terrorism. The conference included the Japanese Red Army, the Armenian Secret Army, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the Iraqi Islamic Call Party, the Islamic Front for the Liberation of Bahrain and Hezbollah in Beirut. This is for the sole purpose of providing training to these organizations, which are supposed to help destabilize the Gulf countries and provide assistance to the militants in these countries to replace the existing governments with similar governments with the existing regime in Iran. The U.S. State Department says that this organization provides support to Hamas, Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad in Palestine. They also say that the Iran has provided a lot of support and training to armed groups that support the Palestinian resistance. They are also accused of aiding the insurgency in southern Iraq. On September 26, 2007, the U.S. Senate passed legislation, with a vote of 76 to 22, designating the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. U.S. President George W. Bush and the U.S. Congress placed the IRGC within the framework of the guidelines stipulated in Executive Resolution 13224, which was issued in the wake of the events of September 11, 2001. In August 2012, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei mandated the Revolutionary Guard and the Quds force to increase terrorist attacks. According to the Iranian government's point of view, their interests are under threat due to the sanctions imposed on Iran by the United Nations and the Western world's support for the Syrian opposition. The Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and Security is believed to be collecting intelligence information to be used to plan terrorist attacks. It is also believed that the ministry has contacts, links and support with terrorist groups and Islamic fundamentalist movements. It is also believed that the ministry itself carries out some terrorist acts, mostly directed at political opponents. Terrorist actions against other states and individuals. On November 4, 1979, 500 Iranians stormed the American embassy in Tehran. They have taken hostage and captured 90 staff and visitors. Later, they released non-Americans, African-American women and men. 52 Americans were held hostage for 444 days. The Americans imposed an embargo against Iran, and demanded that the hostages be released. While Iran called for the lifting of the embargo on the frozen Iranian assets in the United States, $24 billion, as a condition for the release of the hostages. Iran also called for the arrest of the Shah of Iran, who was residing at the time in the United States, and his extradition to Iran. Later, Iran agreed to accept $8 billion in frozen assets in exchange for the hostages' release. In 2000, the former hostages filed a lawsuit against the Iranian government, accusing it of being a state sponsor of terrorism, and demanding that it be tried under the terms of the anti-terrorism law issued in 1996. The lawsuit was won, but without compensation, because the judgment issued in 2002 stated that one of the conditions for their release was not to grant any compensation for damages. The 2020 assassination plan of the U.S. ambassador in South Africa. Politico published a report revealing Iran's plan to assassinate the American ambassador to South Africa, Landmarks. It is said to be linked to a secret network at the Iranian embassy in Pretoria, the country's capital. Landmarks is 66 years old and in October 2019 took over the United States Embassy in South Africa. The release of the Politico report sparked a strong reaction from U.S. President Donald Trump, who warned in a Twitter message, "An attack by Iran, in any way against the United States, would result in an attack 1,000 times more dangerous to them. U.S. State Department Report. In July 2012, the U.S. State Department released the 2011 Worldwide Terrorism Report. Iran remains a state sponsor of terrorism, and associated terrorist activity increased in 2011, the report states. Iran has continued to provide financial, material and logistical support to terrorist and armed groups throughout the Middle East and Central Asia. The report stated that Iran has continued to provide lethal support, including the provision of weapons, training, funding, and guidance, to Iraqi Shiite militant groups targeting U.S. and Iraqi forces, as well as civilians. Although Iran has pledged to support stability in Iraq, the Quds forces providing training to the Taliban in Afghanistan on small unit tactics, small arms and explosives, and on indirect fire weapons, such as mortars, artillery and missiles. Moreover, the report stated that Iran assisted other countries, providing weapons and training to the Assad regime in Syria, which launched a brutal crackdown on the Syrian rebels, as well as assisting in the rearming of Hezbollah. The report also indicates that Iran is not ready to bring to justice the senior members of Al-Qaeda residing in it. It also refused to specify or even publicly announce their names. Moreover, Iran allowed Al-Qaeda members to operate and facilitate a pipeline across Iranian territory. This enabled Al-Qaeda access to funds and easy transportation for workers and operators to and from South Asia and elsewhere. Continued.